written a thesis statement. Hopefully going at it in pieces is going to kind of help with the argumentative essay. So critical, creative, practical thinking is all part of the thinking skills that you need at the university level, and more specifically when you're writing most types of writing assignments, but especially when it comes time to an argumentative essay. So you will have different types of written assignments, or maybe none at all, depending on your course and your profs. So just be aware that I'm specifically talking about the argumentative essay. So just for the purpose of this course, make sure that you're following along with what I'm saying, which may or may not match what other profs will say for different assignments. So every professor is going to have a different way of assigning it, is going to have different expectations. And like I said, I think I've said more than once, if you're not clear on the expectations for that particular assignment in that particular course, ask for clarifications. And also, which should be, for the most part, in the syllabus, in the D2L, whatever learning management system they're using, you should have some kind of copy somewhere of the information that's expected of you. Hopefully it's in the form of a rubric or some kind of list with criteria as to here's what I want you to include in the particular assignment. So double check with profs, because as much as, yes, you're assigned a particular essay, it could be a different type of essay. And even at that, even if you were assigned 3 argumentative essays in 3 different courses, the expectations can still be different. So just double check if you're not sure. And then for our course, also you should be double checking the outline, the syllabus outline, whatever you want to call it, pretty much the same thing on D2L with the due dates. So the argumentative essay outline is due next Friday. So tonight, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the thesis statement so that you have that as a good basis to then be able to follow along on Thursday when I'm going to show you sample essay outlines. Again, I say essay outline and everyone can interpret an outline differently. So there's not really a right or wrong way to complete or do an essay outline. But I am going to be expecting certain things. So I'll make sure that you know this is what I expect in the essay outline for me in this course, which could be different than anything else. I mean, generally speaking, an outline is like in French, we'd say like the skeleton. It's the general plan of your essay. But I'm going to have a couple things that I expect specifically. So that's due next Friday, like I said. It is the outline plan of your essay. You should have a general idea of where you're headed, but don't think that you're stuck with the thesis statement or the plan that you're creating here right now in February. By the time your final essay is due at the end of March, it could look totally different than what you've started with. And that's okay. That's part of the writing process. So just keep that in mind, that just because you're submitting it, just because you're being graded on it, my goal is to give you feedback to be able to enhance your thesis statement, or maybe make it more clear, more concise, whatever the case may be, or maybe narrow it down. So don't feel like you're stuck on what you submit in the next week or two. It most likely will change, especially based on the research that you're doing. Because right now, if you remember on Thursday, I had asked you to start getting an idea of what you want to do with your argumentative essay. So that's, you should have a general topic in mind. If you already have a thesis statement, great. But what's going to happen for some people is if you picked a particular topic and you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So you write your thesis statement, then you go and you find out that there's not enough research to support it, or the research kind of contradicts what you wanted to say. So all of that will play into why it might not look the same, and that's okay. Jesse, what do you mean by deadlines? They're in the syllabus. So the essay outline you guys see it on my screen right now, right? So for Jessica and Jesse, so under syllabus, the important dates. So the essay is split into outline on February 12th, essay draft on March 5th, and essay final on March 26th. So those are the 3 parts of the essay that you're going to be submitting, and those are the due dates. Okay, so those are under content, syllabus, D2L. Perfect. Okay. So that's why I have it on the screen so that you guys can see where to find it. So those are the three pieces for the essay, which ties into what I'm going to present tonight. So again, you should have a general topic idea. You might have a clear thesis in mind already. Great. If you don't, that's okay too. So we're not going to get very far tonight. This PowerPoint is really full of stuff. So I'm going to try and split it up into pieces and put them on D2L as I go, because I think it's got to be 50, 60 slides. I was being lazy. So I'll make sure that you have the pieces as we go. But tonight, the goal is to get you to a point where you're going to be stating your thesis. So whether you have it and you might make tweaks, or tonight you'll maybe have a little bit more of an idea of how to formulate a thesis statement. And then Thursday, I suggest and recommend that you do this. You do not have to, but like I've said, I think already, you can submit it to me and I can give you some feedback just on the thesis statement, kind of give you some guidelines or maybe some questions you hadn't thought of, so that if you want to have that in place before you submit the outline, I'm open to that. So this week in particular, I'll stay after class if you have questions more on a one-on-one basis, or like I said, we can go by emails, whatever works for you guys to kind of get a thesis, a workable thesis statement, so that it'll help you with your outline and your research. Does that make sense? Did I say thesis statement enough times in the past 10 minutes? I don't think I did. Are we good? Okay. So far, I'm on top of the chat and everything, so we'll see if that keeps up for the rest of the night. So tonight, more specifically, critical thinking skills. We're going to focus on that a little bit more. And then again, how it relates to your essay, but specifically the thesis statement for tonight. So we won't actually get through all of those pieces right now. It's for the next 2 weeks if this is the particular topic. I forgot. So we'll just play a hypothetical situation in which if I had normally I have a box in front of me when I do this in person, but it's kind of just like a activity to get you thinking. If I had a box in front of me and you had to figure out what was inside of the box, manipulate, shake the box so that it makes a sound, and I can't show you the item, what kinds of questions would you ask to get to what the object inside the box is? So it's to get you thinking about questioning and how to ask an effective question, or how to formulate an effective question, pose it, whatever verb you want to use. So it really is just to get you thinking of how would you figure out what's inside of the box and how can you help each other get to that. So if you can't ask me to open the box, if you can't ask me to shake it, you can't touch the box, but I could maybe demonstrate something for you. What are the types of questions you would ask? Would they be very narrow? Would they be really pointed questions? Would you help each other out? So hypothetically, if Beth were to ask, well, is it heavy? Well, that's a very subjective type of question. I could say yes, and it could have been light for someone else. So helping work off of questions is about this brainstorming aspect of figuring out what your arguments are, what your ideas are going to be within your thesis statement. So specifically, when you're asked, the types of questions that you ask are important, and effective questioning is the result. So I apologize for forgetting to do that, but so basically you have to know why you're questioning. So what is the goal? Sorry, I got distracted by the background. Hi. It's okay if it's not a kid, it's a dog, it's a spouse, there's someone always in the background. So what is the purpose? Why do you have a need to question? What is the goal in asking questions? Is going to influence what your question is going to be. The next piece is you have to want to question. So in person, not that we could have done it this way anyways, virtually, but in person, I always told them they could have whatever object is in the box. So they won it at the end. So whether or not they were motivated to win that object gave them more of a want to question. Some people don't participate and some people don't care. So the need to know, going back to adult learning, you have to have the motivation to want to ask a question. And then questioning in different ways. So an open-ended question versus a closed question. That's going to have an impact on the types of answers you're getting and will or won't help you. So again, this is just it's just an overview to kind of link, are you questioning what you're doing and what kinds of questions are you asking in regards specifically to your thesis statement? So if you have, there's 2 resources there. So if you ever want to, these are 2 resources that will help you with the types of questions that you can ask. Then this will loop back to the end of this topic, where we link it back to Bloom's taxonomy and other methodologies, taxonomies, ways of organizing information. So it'll loop back, which is why this is there at the beginning, but it didn't prepare. I didn't prepare accordingly, so I apologize for that. But there is a reason for this. So it's just being able to ask an effective question is going to help you when you're trying to really pinpoint the argument that you're looking for your thesis statement, for the argumentative essay in general. So one way of doing this is relatively something that I just discovered it a few years ago, so I'm not as knowledgeable on this, but again, it goes back to all the other quizzes and questionnaires that I got you guys to do. This is another one. This is there's 6 hats to the way you think. So 6 different types of thinkers. So this is Bono, if I'm not mistaken. And this is just another way to categorize. I hate to give you all labels, but another way to distinguish different ways of thinking. So the white hat for this these particular categories is someone who's just interested in the facts. Whereas the yellow hat is someone who kind of wants to find the value or the benefit in something. A black hat is more just a very cautious and critical thinker. A green hat really focuses on creativity, different ways of approaching a problem, trying to find multiple solutions that are probably different than what's already been discovered or used. The blue hat is really much more about the process, how you get to somewhere, to your end goal, your end solution. And then the red hat would be very much about intuition, emotions, a little bit more of that practical piece. So this is another way of thinking about how we think. There's 2 different visuals in case this one wasn't, I guess, pretty enough for you. And then if this is in no way an assignment, but if you're interested in finding out which hat you wear, these are 2 on the left, different questionnaires, quiz things that you can complete. I did it just out of curiosity, and I ended up being a yellow hat. So I really like to see the positive and try to see the values and benefits of something. So that's the way that I tend to think. So again, it's just another way of getting to know who you are. You could agree with it, not agree with it, but it's just recognizing that everyone's going to think in a different way and perceive the problem in a different way. So even if I would have assigned you all the exact same topic for your argumentative essay, apart from you might have similar research, you're all going to have formulated it differently. You will have supported your arguments differently, and the arguments themselves will take on slightly different perspectives, because we'll get into opinion versus fact. You're all going to base it in some form in your own beliefs and your own opinions, which there's no problem with that necessarily. You're all going to take a different viewpoint, a different spin on that. And that's where the thinking hats come in, because everyone will have perceived it differently. So just keep that in mind. It's just one more way that's going to distinguish everyone's work. And that's what makes it so fun for me, because again, I have the same topics come back every single year, and no 2 people have written the exact same essay, right? And no one has formulated the thesis in exactly the same way. So that's one of the reasons why, because we all think differently. This is it's two little paragraphs of definitions, just to get you thinking about thinking again. Based on the critical thinking community is the actual website resource. But I liked this because it says that much of our thinking left to itself is biased, distorted, partial, uninformed, or downright prejudiced. So it's the fact that as objective as we're trying to be, we do still have everything that is like our own being will influence the way that we think. So I liked this just because it gets you to kind of put yourself in check, which a lot of students have a hard time, especially with an argumentative essay. Again, I'm going to be linking it back to this assignment the entire night, so just prepare yourselves. A lot of students will start their argumentative essays based on a belief, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to remove yourself from the writing. So it cannot come across as this is my belief. This is I'm right, you're wrong. Even though you agree with what you're writing, it has to stay neutral and objective when you're actually putting pen to paper, or in this case, typing things out. So be aware of how you feel and how you believe. And I'm not here to question or tell you that your beliefs are wrong, by no means. I disagree with a lot of the argumentative essays that I get, but that's half the fun in it. It's the fact that you're challenging my own perceptions and my own ways of interpreting a particular topic. And that's the point. The argumentative essay is not necessarily, does it support your beliefs? Did you find research to support the statement that you wrote? So that's where I like this paragraph, because it gets you thinking about, okay, yes, I absolutely agree. Or sometimes I tell students, try to pick something purposefully that you disagree with, because then your arguments will be that much stronger, because you're going against what your natural inclination was. Most students don't, and that's okay too. But just keep that in mind, especially when you're writing an argumentative essay, because it needs to stay objective. There's no I statements in an argumentative essay. I believe you're not necessarily adding your own personal experiences in an argumentative essay, because that might, depending on the way that it's worded, it might not support, it will weaken your argument, because it's not necessarily something that is academic or peer reviewed, and it's not necessarily something that is fact. So just keep that in mind. So that's why I like that particular paragraph. And then this other one, again, it's just to get you thinking. The fact that you're critically thinking of a particular topic problem from different perspectives, it improves the way that you think. You're trying to challenge yourself as much as possible. So when I talk about the critical, creative, and practical thinking, and the fact that we might be stronger in one over the other, it's taking a more holistic approach to the way that you think, which in turn improves your thinking and your ability to argue. So all ties back into the essay. This is something to think of when you're trying to picture thinking skills of the 21st century. So it goes beyond just analytical, critical. No, analytical and critical are the same. Analytical, creative, and practical. So especially when, if we want to tie this into like future employment, these are the types of things that employers are looking for, which are still part of our thinking process. So the fact that you're more open-minded, but yes, you can still analyze, reason, and evaluate, which would be analytical thinking. There's reflection that you can, either self-reflection or reflection on something else. The fact that you're able to reflect, problem solve, and decision-making would play into that as well. Real-world application. So hopefully you're seeing this all ties into stuff that we've done up until this point. And that is one representation of how you should be developing your thinking skills further. Not that you don't have any, it's just what are the areas where you can lean a little bit more into. Plus I like visuals, so there's a lot of pictures. All right, that's like a brief intro into thinking and critical thinking, and we're going to go into analytical thinking in a second. Are there any questions about that first little chunk? No? Okay, so that makes hopefully sense. Are you starting to see the links to the essay? And hopefully you're starting to reflect on your own thinking and how it's going to apply specifically to the essay. If that's not clear, please let me know. Okay, perfect. All right, so the next chunk is analytical thinking of 3 thinking. So again, I split it up into 3. Okay, perfect. So for analytical thinking, there's going to be 4 steps that we're going to talk about. Steps 1 and 2, I'm going to kind of combine. And step 3 is hopefully where you're headed in the next week or so with your argumentative essay. So analytical thinking, step 1 is gathering information. I'll show you all 4 and then we'll go into each one. Then it's going to be breaking the information into parts, and then it'll be the analyzing, examining, evaluating the information that you've gathered to then make connections. So making connections can be within the confines of your essay, making connections between your research, between your arguments, between your ideas, or it could be broader as in making connections between assignments, between courses, between your courses and your program. Like the possibilities are endless, but analytical thinking is all about gathering the information, examining it, evaluating it, finding its usefulness, and making those connections. So for steps 1, gathering information. So this is where if you don't already have a topic, this is the step that you're in currently in regards to your argumentative essay. So this is in the middle. Pluto should be reclassified as a dwarf planet. We lost Pluto from our solar system, I don't even know how many years ago now, 2000 something. So the fact that Pluto should be reclassified as a dwarf planet is somewhere to begin. It's a good beginning when it comes to a topic that you could argue. So that's the point of the argumentative essay. It needs to be a topic that is debatable. There needs to be 2 sides to it. It is not a comparison. You're not comparing Pluto to another planet necessarily. It's Pluto all by itself. It needs to be reclassified as a dwarf planet. So here are this is one way of presenting and organizing information. We'll go into other methods later, but this is called a mind map. So where everything ties back to Pluto should be reclassified as a dwarf planet. So what are the reasons? What is the evidence and the proof as to why it should be? So you're taking a clear stance as yes, it should be reclassified as a dwarf planet, as opposed to no, it was bumped down for these reasons. So there's a fact that you could be for or against that particular topic. But let's say it was more general to begin with, that's okay too. So it could have just been something like, dwarf planets in general. And then we could have specified Pluto, which was one of our planets. I can't even mention half of this stuff here, but that's one way of gathering the information based on a topic that you already have. So here are some of the questions, going back to the types of questions you can ask to analyze a particular topic idea that you have in mind. So what kinds of information do I need? What am I gathering? So for an argumentative essay, you're gathering scholarly articles, peer-reviewed academic sources. So I'm going to end this chunk next week with how to access the library resources and databases online. So as an LU student, you have access to academic and scholarly sources and resources within our databases. So that's a place to start. Google Scholar is another place to start. So it's not blogs, it's not Wikipedia. Those are the types, that's the kind of information that you're looking for. You're looking for support to prove your thesis statement. So your main argument that everything else is going to be based off of has to have proof somewhere. There have to be research done or people who have written stuff on this topic that support what you're trying to say. So the information, we'll go into a lot of these pieces. Again, I'm going to present you one of many ways to kind of evaluate the credibility of a source. But right now in the gather information phase, just kind of figure out what's available to you. and what is acceptable as academic. So even if you're starting on a Wikipedia page, that's great. It'll give you a good starting point, but that doesn't necessarily become something that you would include as a source in an academic paper. So we'll get back into analyzing the sources that you find. In the gather information piece, you're just kind of picking up the information that falls under your particular topic. And if we tie back to week 1, make sure you're tracking all of the information that you're gathering, whether it's URLs for now, that's fine. Find some kind of tracking system that works for you so that if you eventually choose to use this idea or argument, you know who the author was so that you can recognize it in your works cited or bibliography. So you're in the gathering information phase right now. Either you're gathering information to be able to help you narrow down your thesis, or you already have a good thesis in mind and now you're just making sure you're going to have the support that you need to be able to argue that for at least 6 pages. Okay. So the rest of the pieces and the other questions you can ask yourself as you go along, but right now just really focus on gathering in the information. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Oh my goodness. So we're going to have half of them show up like this. So these are in no way, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not, I'm telling you, you have to pick from this list. And these are, I tried to make them as generic, as general, as broad and vague as possible so that you could potentially be inspired by something along these lines. So again, you're thinking about a topic that's debatable. Some people choose more controversial topics where there really are heated discussions and debates on the subject. Some will base it on current events. What's going on in the world around us today is a good indication that there's going to be resources and research available to help support your ideas. So again, if you had no idea where to start, you can link to your interests. You can link it to topics you're looking at in other courses, or maybe something like this will kind of be a jumping off point for you. So arts and entertainment, I have things like actors, musicians, things like that. It could be a particular genre of music. I don't know. You can interpret any of these in multiple ways. Belief systems, I have climate change come back every single year. Last year and this year, COVID came up because this is currently what we're living. Anything to do with culture, education, elections came up because we also lived through the American elections. Any type of financial aspect. So I'll have a lot of students talking about financial need and financial aid, more specifically to post at secondary or higher education. So it can be something that you believe strongly in. It can be something that has had an impact on your life. It can be something that's totally new to you. It's up to you. But these are some common topics. Government and politics comes up a lot. Healthcare, human rights, so gender rights, transgender rights, Indigenous, Aboriginal rights, those all play into that. Law, we have things that are criminalizing or decriminalizing certain acts, religion, sports. Every year I have someone telling me athletes should be paid more or less. Like I said, I think I gave the example already why college athletes should be paid. Social media, the positives, the negatives, sometimes it's linked to mental health, social movements, technology. I mean, the list is endless. The possibilities are whatever you want. You just have to make sure that it is a clearly debatable topic. That's what's most important for argumentative essays. It needs to be debatable and you need to take a clear stand on it. It can't just be, well, yes, there are positives and negatives to social media. That's not an argument. You're just kind of stating, you might be comparing at that point, or you might be explaining or describing. That's not the goal of an argumentative essay. You want to steer clear of explaining things to me, describing things to me, anything that falls into a comparison. That one's like a gray area where you could still be arguing. So just if you're not sure what spin to take, that's what the outline is for. If I can see clear indications of the arguments you're going to use to support your thesis, I'll be able to tell you if it's you've taken a clear enough position. So again, start from here if you want. If you don't want to, don't worry about it. And I've had a couple students already ask me, can we just talk about this particular topic and see how I can narrow it down? Perfect. These are super general, very vague. You need to have a very narrow perspective on the particular topic you're going to choose. So it needs to be as specific as possible. To have an example to finish tonight with. So hopefully that will help when it comes to you stating your thesis. Okay, any questions so far? Any topics that you think maybe I didn't think of? You want to add something, go for it. Again, this is not, it's not a question of me judging you or anybody else. We're not here to judge anyone, and it's not about your opinions. It's about what can you argue and support with research. That's the point of the argumentative essay. Okay, I think I covered most of the most common topics, or the ones that get repeated a lot every single year. And every year someone surprises me with something that I didn't even think of. And it's a fun surprise. But these are, again, you can pick something off of this list. Everyone could. And I guarantee no one will have taken exactly the same approach. So I'm not concerned by any means. Keep working. All right, so you're in the gathering information. Breaking information into parts would be the example of the mind map. You're starting to organize things. Basically, you've gathered the information. How are you going to, what are you going to use? How are you going to use it? And then here it's examine, analyze, and evaluate the information. So step 3 is where you need to get to be able to complete an outline on your essay. So you have to have examined and evaluated the information and the resources and the research to then be able to decide what's going to be included in your plan and what's not. Okay, so keeping that in mind, one of the first things to ask yourself when you're presented with information or research is whether or not it's a fact or an opinion. So again, a lot of your essays are going to start in an opinion that you have, but then your research has to have the facts and the evidence that prove that that's not just your opinion. It's not, I believe this. It's going to be, oh, research has shown that, and then you're going to state it that way. So I thought it was important. This is not probably, I know you know what opinion and a fact is, but it's a good refresher because every year I have students who write me opinion essays. And that's, again, why the draft is going to be so important, because I don't want you to get to the end and have written me an essay that's anything but argumentative. So the point of the draft is for me to really be able to flag, no, this is not supported, or you don't have enough research, or your research is not reliable. So it's not proven, it's not a fact at that point. So if I did this correctly, I should have shared, I think I shared my sound. I think you'll be able to hear it if I press play.
Writing a top-notch research paper requires a lot of work. You need a strong thesis statement.
Can someone give me a thumbs up if you hear it?
Solid facts. This will make your argument more convincing and overall improve the quality of your paper. An opinion, on the other hand, is not usually the best choice for research papers.
Yeah.
Of course, it can depend based on your assignment and thesis statement, but in general, an opinion weakens your argument. An opinion is subjective, based on emotions or personal belief, and open to interpretation and cannot be confirmed. Opinions are also inherently biased, which you do not want to have in a research-based paper. A fact, on the other hand, is accepted by the...
Okay, sorry. I think it's my sound on my computer. The sound on...
Writing a top-notch research paper
that
requires
better?
a lot of work. You need a strong thesis statement that is supported by objective, solid facts. This will make your argument more convincing and overall improve the quality of your paper. An opinion, on the other hand, is not usually the best choice for research papers. Of course, it can depend based on your assignment and thesis statement, but in general, an opinion weakens your argument. An opinion is subjective, based on emotions or personal belief, and open to interpretation and cannot be confirmed. Opinions are also inherently biased, which you do not want to have in a research-based paper. A fact, on the other hand, is accepted by the majority, verified by experts, and is proven information. This is what will make your research paper awesome. With so much information out there, it can be hard to tell if what you're reading is factual or based off of opinions. Sometimes an article is written in such a clever way that it can read like it is factual when it really is subjective. So, how can you tell if something is fact or opinion? Here are a few tips to help you tell the difference. Is the author known for having extreme points of view? For more controversial topics, you may come across what seems like a credible source, but the author may have an extreme point of view and just be a very convincing writer. If you're not sure, see what you can learn about the author to determine if there is a bias. If you hear someone say during an interview or read in an article, "I think," "I feel," "my belief is that," essentially any statement involving personal feelings, well, that's an opinion. For example, when someone says, "Cronuts are the greatest dessert pastry of all time and they make your taste buds dance," this is an opinion. What makes a great pastry is totally subjective and can change depending on whom you ask. There isn't really any way to prove a pastry as the greatest of all time. Cronuts were crafted by Dominique Ansel and were a trendy treat in 2013 are facts. There are lots of sources that prove that Dominique Ansel was the creator of Cronuts. Newspaper reports can also confirm that people waited in long lines to get one of these pastries for hours, but after a few months, the hubbub died down. Remember, if a statement is proven to be true, and ideally you can confirm it elsewhere, it is a fact. Statements that cannot be verified and include emotions, personal beliefs, or bias are opinions. Spotting the difference between the two will allow you to choose the strongest sources for your research paper.
All right, so that's most likely a refresher, but I like some of the comparisons that they made to kind of help you if that's not necessarily something you're familiar with. And again, there's it's called the CARS test. It's an acronym, so I'll show you that. There's tons of questions that you can ask and ways in which you can verify like I said, the reliability of a source. So we'll get into that later. But it is something to consider the bias and the perspective of the author of your articles as well. But right now, again, you're at the beginning of your essay. So it's gathering the information and then making sure that, a blog post might not be the best support for your argument because it is most likely based in opinion, whereas something that's a little bit more academic will have support or might direct you to a research study or whatever. So just keep that in mind. If you want to start flagging the information that you're not sure of or the sources now, that'll be a good start. But you're in the gathering phase. You should be in the gathering phase right now. This is most likely next week or when you have a clearer picture of what you want to write about. But just keep that in mind that your opinions and the opinions of the author aren't going to strengthen your arguments. So you really want something that you can verify that it's not just one person that said it, that multiple authors, multiple research, multiple articles are all in support of whatever position that you take. That's going to strengthen your argument. So those are things to consider with an argumentative essay in particular, because it needs to be based in facts with support and evidence, proof of what you're saying. Okay. All right. So this is, again, it's just more making sure that opinions and facts are clear in your mind, which I know that they are. So this is probably just repetitive at this point, but I want to make sure. So a fact is going to deal in like actual, most likely dates, times, places, their events. Okay, so the example on the left are the statements, whereas something that would show more evaluation. That means it's a little bit more subjective. That's gonna, a little flag should go off and this might lean more towards opinion. So the example at the bottom of the use of the euro has been beneficial to all the states of the European Union. There's a lot of things that should flag in your when you're reading it, saying, this might not be as objective as I think. So the fact that it's been beneficial to all states, okay, is that an absolute? Maybe, maybe not. And beneficial, what does that mean? A lot that's just gonna, we can't really evaluate, we can't measure it, we can't verify it. Concrete or measurable words and statistics, so exact numbers, is going to support your opinion. So a lot of students will take, it's going to depend on your topic, but like Statistics Canada comes up as something that's most likely a reliable source and will support your arguments. Anything that is describing something in exact terms, so the fact that on the left it's an exact number of students enrolled in the semester versus, it's going to set a new enrollment record this year. Okay, so that's not only a future event, we don't know. And again, it's not something that you can verify. I can't count the number of heads. It's not anything that's real. It hasn't actually taken place. So we want to try and avoid emotional words and absolutes. So anything where there's some kind of measure of good versus bad, that's most likely going to be an opinion. So a lot of this is like, it's very similar from one line to the next. But it's just another way to check to make sure that you're staying as objective as you can. I don't want to scare you into thinking that like this is a huge mistake if you have an argument that's not necessarily as objective as it could be. It's just try and keep that in mind when you're formulating your sentences, and just even the way that the words that you're using can show a bias even if you don't mean to. So keep those in mind when you're writing your essay. So a couple more examples here. So if I were to say governments must invest more in the investment, so that would lean more towards an opinion, because one, I can't necessarily verify or check that, and it's super vague, but the verb here must shows a little bit more subjectivity. So it has to be done. Okay, so these are by the way, very general statements to begin with. So there's an argument to be made that if it were formulated differently and had support in it and the wording was a little bit different, it could more easily be a fact, especially in the world that we live in today. But it's just to kind of give you an idea that the must in particular is a word that you want to avoid. Yes, you can use it. It's just the way that you use it. So the government should invest more in the environment has a little bit more give. It's a little bit less of an absolute. So that's one way of rewording it, maybe. The research team has discovered a new method for conducting this chemical analysis. So especially if I were to add the research team and put a source in there and source it to the actual study that was done, this could easily be a fact. Okay, so that's one way of you're staying very objective. You're just stating the fact. The research team discovered a new method for this particular analysis. You would obviously go into more detail before and after, but that's something that I can verify. I can check that. And specifically, if you're mentioning research or studies that have been done, I'm expecting to see the source of that information. So it's not just, you didn't just randomly write the research team. Which research team? You'll have to have linked that to your bibliography works cited at some point. So studies have shown, if a sentence starts with that, I'm gonna expect to see an in-text reference that says, this is the study I'm referring to. These are the researchers I'm referring to. The use of computers at the college has increased and the stationary budget has doubled in the last few years. So going back to the other slide where it said, best if you have exact numbers, this is vague. It could be a lot more specific. But in general, it's okay. The use of computers has increased and the stationary budget has doubled. We use a lot more paper and paper products and a lot more computers. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, but I would question, where is this information coming from if you don't source it, especially if it's doubled. Okay, but doubled means what? You went from 100 to 200, or is it bigger numbers? So I would expect some kind of proof somewhere in your essay to support that statement. Okay. You can hear all the news you need to know from the BBC Radio 1 news team. So this is clearly an opinion, because I'm saying everything you need to know is on that radio station. No, obviously not. That's not the only source of news.
The best source of news is actually CNN. Best possible place you'll ever get anything you ever need to know.
Which we can absolutely, sorry, Justin, just because I'm not saying I don't agree with you by any means. No, this is something that can be argued. So the fact that
it's the most biased news network in the world. So yeah.
So whether or not you agree with what Justin just said or the number 4 on the screen, it's the fact that I can verify it one way or the other. So that's what's going to differentiate a fact versus an opinion. The fact that you wrote something and it's clearly contradictory to everything else that's available out there, that's going to be a flag. Or is it very biased? Whether or not we could insert any radio, any news network, news company. So be very wary of that. We'll get into fake news and that everything that goes along with that later on. But just keep that in mind. So whether or not you're taking the same stand that you believe in, where's your proof? Where's your evidence? Where's the research that proves that? That's more where you're headed with an argumentative essay. According to the latest survey, families are purchasing more household items on credit. So the same with the other one above. According to the latest survey, okay, I need to see what survey you're talking about. You need to be able to source that specifically for that particular sentence. And if you have the proof and the evidence that shows me the survey and the survey results, absolutely, that becomes a fact. Okay. So those are just some examples of just the way that you're wording things. And I'm literally, I got into the habit of I'll just put source ? In essays where I question either where did you get this from or did you forget? Tell me where you got this from is how I'll put source ? That's normally what I do when I'm flagging things. Google Scholars, Emmanuel, Google Scholar articles for the most part are a lot more academic in nature. So using Google Scholar as a search engine is a good place to start. Especially if you're not used to the library databases and like the Laurentian, like the university databases yet. But yeah, if you want to switch to Google Scholar, for the most part, those are going to be a lot more reliable than just a Google search. Not necessarily, I'm not saying don't use Google, but yeah, for sure, you can definitely start there.
The only problem with the Google Scholar is that it doesn't give you the whole articles unless you pay for it.
Yeah, so that's a good note. So if you're logged into my Laurentian and you're accessing them from the databases, something that appears on Google Scholar that you don't have access to, you may have access to through the database. So yes, it might not be accessible at all through Google Scholar if it's not a search engine or database that we have a license for. License? Yeah, I assume a license is whatever Laurentian has to pay for to give us access to databases. So sometimes what I do with Google Scholar is I'll note the ones that sound super interesting that can't open or I can't have access to. And I'll copy down like the title and the author, and then I'll double check in our databases to make sure that I can access it. Sometimes if you're logged in, it'll automatically open it because it recognizes that you're still like you did pay for it. But other times, it's a good note for Justin to have made that there is going to be a difference with your access to the PDFs and articles if you're going through Google Scholar. But for the most part, it's a good place to start, especially if you have access to them. I don't know what happened. Okay. So the next piece is an argument. This is a 10-minute video. We're not going to get into it tonight, but if anyone could give me a definition of an argument, what would it be? I've been talking about it all night and then I haven't really defined it for you yet. Okay, so there's a paragraph missing on that slide, which has one possible definition of an argument. And I really do like I said, it's a 10-minute video. I really do like this video. It gives you a really, really good explanations and examples of what an argument is. So I do recommend it. So again, I'll make sure that this first chunk of the PowerPoint is available tonight so that you can reference it and use it when you're working through your thesis statement. Make myself a note. A statement that can be talked for or against. Yeah, that's part of it for sure. So yeah, it ties back into the argumentative essay. My arrow's not working. So a set of connected ideas, so supported by examples made by a writer, you, to prove or disprove a point. So that goes to what you were saying, Emmanuel, to prove or disprove a point. So this is I have to take a stand on a particular argument. It has to be very clear from your thesis and introduction that, oh, okay, this essay, regardless of your own beliefs and opinions, this essay will argue the positive, the negative, the advantages, disadvantages, for, against, or whatever the statement is. Okay. So a 10-minute video, if you think you need more information on an argument, it's there for you. And what did I say? I have to make a note to give you this half right now. Okay, so download. I'll make sure before I forget, I'll do it right as soon as I log off. Okay. So this is in line specifically with something that the video explains. So they explain how there could be flaws in your arguments, whether or not you're aware of them. So the fancy term for that is a logical fallacy. So it's a flaw in the way that you approached your argument. So the video links to gives you some of like the main or most common examples of flaws you could have in an argument. This, I know you can't read it. Again, I just like visuals. If you click on the link here, it'll bring you to the website, and the website will explain all the different types and what the flaw is. So it's just this awareness of the argument might sound great, but is it a true argument? Maybe not. So link it back to either this or the video, and that will help you. I'll go into this again. Like I said, we're not done with critical, creative, practical thinking for the next week or two. So we'll come back to this, but this is a good place to start, is the video, and this website gives you an idea of the different types of arguments. So linking back to the essay, I just wanted to I'm going to keep mentioning it. I know I keep mentioning it. This is just the basic form of the essay. So again, we're in like the introduction part right now, but in your outline and in your plan, you have to have an idea of where you're headed. So keep that in mind, and keep in mind that, the easiest way for when students ask me what kind of essay, like how many paragraphs, if you want it, this is an example of a standard 5-paragraph or 5-point essay where you have your introduction, your 3 main arguments, and then a conclusion. So it literally has 5 parts to it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's 5 paragraphs. This is like the standard. I don't care. I mean, you can have 4 arguments, 4 body paragraphs if you really want, because you had 4 really good sub-arguments, sub-topics, sub-ideas that link back to your thesis. So I would say minimum what's going to happen is you're going to have 2 really strong arguments, and you're going to have one that's like, and then you're going to debate whether or not you want to put first or in the middle or last. It doesn't matter. So traditional essay is going to have 3 main arguments that are going to support your thesis statement. Just to give you an idea of that's the general structure of one. I don't have a preference to how many, but it's going to have, I don't have a preference. You have to have at least 2 to 3 arguments that are going to support your thesis. Some, well, not some. When I get into the outline on Thursday, you're going to have to also account for the opposite side of what you're trying to argue. So some students, they're going to do 2 paragraphs. Like the structure doesn't matter to me. It depends on how you think and how you organize things. Some students like to do their 4, like the position that they've taken. They want to do all those paragraphs first, and then they'll just leave the last one as a counter to all of their arguments. And some students like to do it as they go. So here's my side, here's my position, but also here's what others say. Okay, but here's my second argument, but also here's what could be said against it, or the opposite of it. So I'll get back into that. It would just kind of get your mindset on this is where you're headed. And then the different thesis statements will vary depending on the type of essay or assignment that you're being tasked with. So for us, it is it's an analytical essay in the sense. So you have a particular claim, but it's not necessarily in line with your area of study. Really what you're going to be looking for is a position paper. You have a statement of position plus the reasons. All the wording is, like, the terminology can differ, but I just wanted to have this as a reference point for the ways, the different ways that you can write a paper, the different types of essays that are out there, and the ones that, like, it's not a lab report, it's not a case study, it's definitely not a personal reflection. You're not proposing research. You're researching to be able to prove your points, but it's not to further research in a particular discipline. So it's not a research paper in that sense. It is based on this one. It's a position paper. So it's a position paper where you have, you're taking a stand and you have your reasons that are supported by proof. So it's analytical position paper. But argumentative essay is the actual name of it, which is what, if you Googled it, that's what you find. So here, there are going to be 5 or 6 questions. So here's kind of the steps involved in a thesis statement, in formulating the thesis statement. So what is the purpose and the audience? So your purpose is to argue a particular position, not necessarily to persuade me. A persuasive argument is a persuasive essay is its own thing. But if you want to take the view of you're trying to convince me of something, that's what your goal is. You're trying to convince me to kind of see your point of view. That's the goal. That's your purpose in an argumentative essay. You're trying to argue a particular position on a particular topic. I am your audience, so keep that in mind, in the sense that I'm not going to know, like, the specifics of. One student he argued the history of a computer and how we should be using this. I can't even tell you what it was about. I mean, the arguments were clear and I was able to follow along with the arguments, so that's fine. But just keep in mind that I have a lot of knowledge, a lot of superficial knowledge on a lot of topics. So the idea here is that what's common knowledge in your discipline is not necessarily common knowledge for everyone. So what you learn in your, political science course is not necessarily something that everyone knows. So if you're not sure if it's common knowledge or not, it's something to check with me. Or if you really just want to be extra certain and extra cautious, source it, reference it. Whether you're referencing, you can absolutely reference like a PowerPoint that your prof did, a conference you attended, a textbook in your particular program. Just be aware of that, because I might question it, not knowing that it's common knowledge. So I'll put my little source question mark, and then you'll be like, no, but this is actually a fact in my discipline. Perfect. But just keep that in mind, that I might flag it because I might not know, I won't know what goes on in your particular field. Then you're going to explore and narrow the topic down. So that's where you're at right now in that step 1 of gathering information. And then what is most useful to most students is if you transform your thesis statement into a question that you can answer. I'll get into the example and hopefully that'll be a little clearer. And then, so turn it into a question that sometimes helps check whether or not it is a strong thesis statement. Then tentative. It's a draft. It is not, you're not stuck with this thesis statement forever. So just try it out. You might rewrite it, you most likely will rewrite it a bunch of times, and that's okay. So before, after, during research, even as you write your essay, you might want to tweak it as you go, and that's totally okay. So just be open to that and be aware that you will need to modify it based on what you've written, and you will need to look at it multiple times to make sure that it really reflects the arguments and the research that you've gathered, so that it really matches everything that's being said and there's a flow to the entire essay. And then, like I said, it's got to be debatable. There has to be some kind of line that we can draw for or against. So hopefully the example will help with this, because I have an example that's, the way that it's worded is pretty common. Oh, okay. This is another really long video. I'm going to keep it in the PowerPoint. I will show this to you guys on Thursday. I think this one is worth watching together, but I want you guys to leave with a really clear picture of how to state a thesis statement and how to research your topic. So I'll come back to this one in particular. So writing thesis statement in 3 steps. Again, these are different ways of approaching it if you're not sure of how to begin or where to start. Oops. So make the topic specific. So asking the who, what, where, which ones. That's what most students have a difficulty with, is being really specific. So the should, does, or doesn't, those are where it's going to be debatable, because obviously someone can say the opposite of that. And then this is a different wording that you could use. You don't have to. So the examples down here: the longer school day in Chicago next year does not guarantee that students will be productive in classes, reminding us that young people need to find learning meaningful. So that's an argument that you could take. There's a lot going on in there. The longer school day in Chicago next year does not guarantee more learning opportunities, resulting in increased student success. So those are things that you can pull apart all of the pieces that are linked to the essay itself. Those aren't the best examples, so I put one on a slide separate so that we can go through it together. Oh, here it is. So here's an example. Can you guys see that too? So social media impacts public awareness in both positive and negative ways. Is this a strong thesis statement? I'm telling you right now, it isn't. So this is a great starting point, and this might be similar to something that you have in mind right now. So it's, how do we get from this to a stronger thesis statement? So if we look at this in pieces, so social media is like the general topic. It's the general theme of the essay. Perfect. So you've already got one check mark. Maybe it's off the list that I showed you earlier. So now we're looking at specifically the impacts on public awareness. Okay. Public awareness, that's, I don't know about you, but it's a little bit vague. I don't really know what public awareness means. And then the next piece should help me to better understand the impacts and on public awareness. So it impacts it in both positive and negative ways. Did I take a stand at all? Do I clearly see what position I'm taking under the topic or the theme of social media impacts public awareness? No, there is absolutely no clear theme in what I'm going to argue. So you're going to just show me both the positive and negative ways. Okay. Where's your argument? So if you look at it in pieces, do you answer the question? So if you would have flipped it, and what's the impact? So going back to the flip it into a sentence, what is the impact of social media on public awareness? There is no answer. So it's not a properly formulated statement, because it doesn't give me any information that could answer that question. Okay. So it's too vague. You really need to narrow it down. And most students find that if they narrow it down into their three main arguments, that's how it's going to be reflected in their thesis statement. So it's all going to tie back into what you're going to write. So the second question or piece that you can analyze within that statement is the fact that can we challenge anything? Is there a debate to be had the way that that particular statement is written, stated? No, because you're telling me there's positive and negatives. Okay, but you need to have reformulated it in a way that tells me the positive impacts far outweigh the negative impacts. That's now you have a clearer stand. I'm taking the position that social media impacts public awareness positively. That's still not a super strong thesis, but at least you're getting to a point where I can kind of see, okay, this is the position that they're going to take. So again, you could be reworking a thesis statement a lot before you get to a point where you've answered the question, you've taken a position, a clear position, and it's not wishy-washy, and it is super specific. So the fact that the positive and negative ways, okay, but does it positively affect what? My social interactions? Is it my health? Is it I don't know. I have no idea what the impacts are. So your thesis statement needs to be that specific. So when we go into the introduction of an essay, your essay should look like what's an upside down triangle, but that thing, a strainer. That's not the official word in English, but anyways, it should look like an upside down triangle where you're starting with a very generalized topic and then you're narrowing it down specifically to the argument that you're going to have and the support that you're going to use to argue that.
I think the cooking tool you're looking for is a funnel.
Thank you. I had the French one in my mind again, and I'm like, no, that's not it. Yeah. So see, it's the visual that helps. So think of it as a funnel or an upside down triangle where you're going into starting general and getting to be very specific. So this would potentially be kind of in the middle of your introduction. It could be, and then you'd have to get more specific. And then, so does my thesis statement pass the how and why test? So again, how does it impact how does social media impact public awareness? And I would even argue that social media is in itself a very vague and all-encompassing term. So even that could be too much. It could be too broad. So you have to kind of think about all the different pieces of your thesis statement. Can you get more specific? And is that part of the argument? So that's something that you have to keep in mind. And then the last question is the so what? What do I care? So you really want, not necessarily to the point where I care. First of all, I care. I think I love reading all of your argumentative essays, but it's what's the point? What's the added value? Is this going to convince me of something? Is this going to make some kind of a change or an impact? Again, even if it's just impacting the way that I think, perfect. But ask yourself the question, not necessarily to find the answer, but this will help you. Okay, well, why? Why is this important? Why do I care? So what? Is another test that you can ask, a way to test your thesis statement. Okay, so keeping all of that in mind, here's one, but not the only way, to reformulate a thesis statement that is a little bit clearer and stronger. So starting with, I wouldn't necessarily start a sentence with because, but anyways, because not every voice on social media is reliable, people have become much more critical consumers of information and thus more informed voters. So this is the example. If you click on the thesis statement title, that's where the source of the example is. But I liked it because it took on a whole different point. Like social media impacts public awareness in both positive and negative ways turned into that. So that's just to show you how where you started is not necessarily where you're going to end up, and that's okay. So keep all of those questions in mind, and then I'm going to end with one more slide.
Wouldn't honestly them still using the term social media be extraordinarily vague? Because social media. So as an example, I would have said something like more specifically like Facebook creates a negative issue because of mental health. And then you
Yeah.
could give multiple points as to why your side of that fence, like there's lots of suicide, lots of this, lots of that, and then conclude it.
Absolutely.
Now, I know a lot of people would say the good thing about Facebook would be, though, the fact that you can reach people that you haven't been able to see in a long time. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And that's why I like this example, because it's one perspective and it absolutely could still be more specific, but there's nothing wrong with keeping it general if your focus is less on the social media, in the sense that it's more the fact that you need to be more critical of information, and that in turn you become a more informed voter. So it depends on the perspective you're going to take. In Justin's example, he would have had to define it a little bit more, because the arguments that are supporting that, you need to be more specific, because you could go for days on social media. There's like the apps just themselves they're just everywhere. And I even had students who debated the fact that, well, social media, does that have to include technology? Our minds go to social media as the apps and things that are available online, but social media could be something else. So there's a lot of interpretation, and there's room for that, and that's okay. It's going to be up to you how specific you want to get. You want to be as narrow as possible, but you also don't want to narrow it so much that you're stuck in a box and you can't find the research to support that. So you might need to take one step back if it gets to a point where you have nothing that's going to support that. So there's going to be a fine line for some of you, depending on your topics, with whether or not you're going to stay a little bit more general or a little bit more specific. So that's the things that I can help with. And also the research is really going to dictate whether or not you can be a lot more specific. So I'm going to end tonight with these questions. So again, it kind of loops back to everything else. And so does your thesis show analysis and depth of thought, or is it mainly descriptive? So don't explain things and don't describe to me the history of something. That's not the point of the argumentative essay. You are evaluating, analyzing, and supporting that argument and position. Do you present an argument about, excuse me, is it worded as an argument, and do you have the support is the argument supported? So make sure that's the whole, whether or not, if you can ask and answer the question, that's going to help you if you're not sure. Contestable, debatable, whatever words you want to use, that's what number 3 is all about. Defensible, in the sense that, can you support it? Have you used qualifying? Don't ask that question. I mean, it can help you. Defensible is another question that you can ask. You don't have to ask all these questions, but if you can answer them all, that's a good indication that it's a strong thesis. And then again, with the so what question. So I threw a lot of stuff at you tonight, but I wanted to get you thinking so that on Thursday we can work through thesis statements together if you're struggling. So the thesis statement is going to be part of the outline, but I didn't want to present the outline before we talked about the thesis statement. So this is where tonight's PowerPoint is going to end. And like I said, I'll make sure that this whole chunk is online on D2L immediately so that you can refer to it. But we're going to stop there for tonight. So it's not homework because the essay is due on the 12th, the outline. But if you want to start thinking and prepping that and bring your questions to me before, during, after class, this is the week to do it so that next week you can focus, this weekend and next week you can focus on the outline. All right, so are there any questions or concerns about thesis statement or the argumentative essay in general? Hopefully it's a little less overwhelming if we're looking at it in chunks. But yeah, so I'm going to end tonight and I'll stay logged on in case anyone has any more specific questions. Otherwise, refer to the PowerPoint and let me know if anything comes up between now and Thursday. Otherwise, I'll answer the rest of the questions Thursday night. All right? Happy Tuesday. Go enjoy the gorgeous weather. We don't know how long it'll last.
Have a good night.
Good night. Stop my share. Stop.